The rock and roll business was still booming, as was the outcry against it. Early in the year, many radio stations around the country began holding record-breaking weeks during which they destroyed rock and roll records on the air. Many other stations adopted the Top 40 format with its restricted playlist of popular tunes. Although this format was widely accepted by the mid-60s, it initially provoked great controversy. Scores of disc jockeys quit such stations, some protesting that the format interfered with their on-air personalities. Others that the playlist was too predictable and rigid. Still others that the format promoted rock and roll too heavily, or not heavily enough. Results from a January survey by the Gilbert Youth Research Organization claimed that rock and roll was not as popular with youth as it was last year. And a program of typical American DJ shows that toured Army bases overseas found rock and roll music and DJs conspicuously absent. The reason? Both a senator and an anti-rock and roll DJ claimed that the presence of rock on such a tour would injure international relations by touching off teen riots in Europe, thus giving the Russians a real story for their propaganda machine. Although rock and roll had proven its profit potential, anti-rock and roll campaigns within the media continued. In one, NBC spot sales advertising department shipped an advertising programming guide album to radio stations around the country. It featured DJ Al Ross of Washington, D.C., station WRC introducing various rock and roll hits. He said, "Well, let's see what garbage music we have here. This one's by the Coasters, 4 fugitives from the hog-calling seminar, and they've come up with an ear-caressing little dandy called Yakety Yak." After this track played, he'd say, "This next little gem features one of the rocking immortals, a real talent by the name of Buddy Holly." After spinning Holly's Rave On, Ross continued, "What'd he say? What? That was Buddy Holly with mood music for stealing hubcaps. Rave On, it's called. You know, for a few seconds there, it did." The disc jockey heavily promoted RCA star Perry Como as the kind of singer who attracted more affluent listeners, but it judiciously failed to attack or even mention RCA's biggest seller, Elvis Presley. And ABC Paramount had such teen idols as Paul Anka and George Hamilton IV. Other teen idols who emerged this year included Frankie Avalon and Tommy Sands. ABC Paramount had Paul Anka and George Hamilton IV record a single titled The Teen Commandments with such lyrics as "Stop and think before you drink and be humble enough to obey. You'll be giving orders yourself someday." Billboard inaugurated its Hot 100 chart this year, officially recognizing the irrelevance of such abstract boundaries as pop, R&B, and country and western. Independent labels from all over kept popping up with such one-hit wonders as the Silhouettes, with songs like Get a Job, and the Sparkle Tones with a song called Black Slacks. Meanwhile, American Bandstand became the hottest show on daytime TV. Dick Clark, the host of Bandstand, even got his own Saturday night show. Hundreds of other such shows debuted all over the country. Stereo records and phonographs, tapes and tape recorders were introduced, and they sold well. The Platters even received gold medallions from the Pope. But there was still one potent weapon that threatened to stop rock and roll dead in its tracks: the sheer weight of adult morality and patriotic obligation, which even rock and roll had not yet been able to vanquish. Jerry Lee Lewis married his 14-year-old third cousin and was too ingenuous to lie about it. The resultant outcry nearly ended his career. And Elvis Presley was drafted into the Army, an event that was expected to have ended his career as well. Stay tuned to this channel to know what happened in 1959. Also, check out our reels featuring every significant date in rock history.